Welcome to the Metal Matt Podcast, and today we will be talking about horror remakes. I know you're looking forward to that just as much as I am. But first, I want to give a couple of shout outs. First of all, once again, the Chucky's Playground, the best site to be on the internet. It's just a great place to be. Another shout out goes to the podcast of Movie Mayhem with Spanky and G. They just released a new episode for The Big Lebowski, and it's just absolutely great once again. And The Big Lebowski is one of my favorite movies of all time, so it's really cool to hear them talk about that. And they also discuss a theory about Donnie, and the theory is that Donnie was never real, and that he was all just an imaginary character of Walter's. And honestly, that wouldn't surprise me. It really wouldn't. I totally buy that. I think it's very probable, But yeah. So anyway, their podcast is just really great. Definitely check them out because they're really good. So now it's time to shoot the shuffle. At number 1, Personality Crisis by New York Dolls from the New York Dolls. A really good glam rock song from the 1970s. Number 2, The End by The Doors from The Doors. A very long, epic song that closes out The Doors' debut album. Number 3, Nothing's Free by Alice Cooper from The Last Temptation. The Last Temptation, I think, is a very underrated album from Alice Cooper. Definitely check it out. Number 4, Nobody's Fool by Cinderella from Night Songs. Night Songs is a really cool glam metal album from the 1980s, and this is a great ballad. Number 5, Because by Alice Cooper from Sgt. Pepper's soundtrack. A great cover of a Beatles song. Number 6, 21 Guns by Green Day from 21st Century Breakdown. Pretty cool ballad. Number 7, Running to the Edge of the World by Marilyn Manson from The High and the Low. A really cool ballad by Marilyn Manson. Number 8, Creatures of the Night by Kiss from Creatures of the Night. In some ways a bit of my own theme song, because, yeah, I am a bit of a creature of the night. Number 9, Come As You Are by Nirvana from Nevermind. A really cool little song. And finally, number 10, Heartbreak Station by Cinderella from Heartbreak Station. Really cool blues rock ballad by Cinderella. And this is when they started to become more of a blues rock kind of band. And it's a really cool song. So now that's done, it's time to check out some horror remakes. And keep in mind that I'm not going to be talking about every horror remake. There will be a few that will be left out, like the Friday the 13th and House of Wax remakes. I won't be able to get to because I haven't watched them yet. I haven't gotten the chance to watch them yet, but when I do, I'll definitely talk about them. So I'll just be talking about a few on here. And so, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 is the first thing we're going to be talking about. And this was actually produced by Michael Bay, of all people, in his Platinum Dunes production studio or something like that. And I didn't really have any high hopes for this movie when I saw it. I thought, alright, it's a remake. I don't really expect much from remakes. So I'll just give it a shot. And surprisingly, I really liked it. No, I did. I really did like this movie. It's a little bit different from the original. Not too much different, but different enough. It's basically the same plot. A group of teenagers traveling to Texas, and they're actually, in this one, they're traveling to a Leonard Skinner concert. And they pick up a hitchhiker who's female in this one. And it's implied that she just escaped from from Leatherface and all that stuff. And she ends up shooting herself through her mouth. which the visual effect is really great on that one. And they end up stopping at a gas station to fix everything up, and they come across a sheriff played by Ari Army, who does a great performance in this film. And then they all go to the house, and all types of stuff happens. And there's a bit of a different family in this one. The sheriff is part of the family. I can't remember who else. There's some type of woman and some type of uncle who's handicapped. I don't really remember the family, to be honest. They're not as memorable as the original. And it has Jessica Biel in it as the final girl, you know. And like the weird thing about it is that the whole town apparently isn't on this. Like Leatherface, as a young boy, had this skin disease, and he was apparently mocked by everybody. And since the sheriff is related to him, I guess they had the whole town kind of protect him, you know. I mean, it's something like that. I really don't know. They never fully explain it to us, and I guess it's better explained in the prequel that came after it in 2006. And I might take a look at that, because it does kind of look interesting. So, really, there's nothing much to say. Ari Army's performance is great. At times, it does kind of seem like he's just playing his Full Metal Jacket character. At other times, he does kind of come off as genuinely creepy, you know. So overall, I did like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. The only thing I wish that they did is I wish that they put it in modern times. Because they set it in the 70s, and I think it would have been much better if it was done in modern times. And the reason I say that is because the cinematography is very sleek, is very modern, and so that's something I wish would have happened. But anyway, I really like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003. It's a pretty okay remake. If anything, it's kind of forgettable, but I thought it was pretty good. So I'd say give it a shot. Then we have Dawn of the Dead 2004. And again, much like Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2003 and like other remakes, I wasn't really expecting much from this one. But again, like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, I ended up kind of liking it. And then this was directed by Zack Snyder, who later went on to do movies like 300, Watchmen, and Man of Steel. And Dawn of the Dead is probably the only film I like from him. But, yeah, it's basically the same plot as the original. There's really not that much different. The one thing I do remember about this movie is that there was some kind of zombie baby that came on for like 2 seconds. And that was really cool to see. And I do kind of wish that they focused on it a little bit longer. But, yeah. The characters, aren't very memorable, but they do kind of, they just kind of have that kind of, I really don't know how to explain it. They're not necessarily forgettable, but they're not people that you remember either, or really care about. I mean, there's really not a lot different. Oh, one thing I do need to mention, in this film, in the original film, there were slow-moving zombies. In this one, the zombies go right up at you. Like, they run after you. And I really like that aspect of it. That was something really different that I don't necessarily think that we've seen yet. We might have seen it in 28 Days Later. I'm not sure. Maybe. I'm not sure. I could be wrong, but I think Dawn of the Dead was one of the first times where we actually saw running zombies. And personally, I think that's a lot more scarier than just slow-moving zombies. Because slow-moving zombies, you can run away from them so easily. But fast-moving zombies, they can really get you, you know. So I found that more frightening, to me, But, that's just me. Other than that, Dawn of the Dead 2004, it's not a bad film, but it's also not a film that I'll remember anytime soon. It's a bit of a forgettable remake, but one that I did like. And so, Halloween 1 and 2, I will focus on these very briefly because I already talked about them in Rob Zombie retrospective and the Halloween retrospective. So I'm not going to focus on it too much, but I will at least talk about them. The first one I thought is a very solid remake. I am a Rob Zombie fan, so I was looking forward to these movies. And I think the first one is very solid. Half of it is a prequel, half of it is a straight remake. And when it does go into a remake territory, it doesn't do too bad, but it is kind of unnecessary. But other than that, I thought it was a really solid movie. I especially like the first half of it being a prequel because it's very interesting. And the second one is a very interesting animal as well because it's really original, which is not what you would expect. And really the only scene that they do remake from the original second installment is the hospital chase scene at the end. And even then, that's pretty different. And that happens at the very start of the film. And the rest of the film is very original. And it's very gory, but at the same time kind of psychological when it comes to Laurie. And it's just really good. And the second one I think is really good because it's just really crazy. And just pretty cool. And that's really it. So I think Halloween 1 and 2, the remakes, are very solid movies. So Prom Night 2008 comes around. And this was... Let's just go ahead and say I hated this movie. I really did hate this movie. I mean, I just hated this remake. And the original Prom Night, which has Jamie Lee Curtis, it's not that great of a movie either. Like, it really isn't. It really is kind of a bad horror movie. And this one's even worse. It really does not have anything in common with the original. The only thing that it has in common with the original is the fact that a killer is out on the loose after the main girl, and it takes place on prom night. That's it. The rest of it is completely different. And and that's not a bad thing. I wasn't expecting them to tell the exact same story over and over again. But they could have at least done something different with the original story. But, it's just kind of a bland movie, really forgettable. A lot of the teenagers, they aren't that memorable. You really just don't care about them. And that's really the main problem with some of these remakes, is the fact that with the teenagers, you just don't care about them. You don't care if they die. And that's a really stark contrast from a lot of the horror movies of the 1980s. The 80s did have their share of forgettable characters, but they also had really memorable characters, like Crispin Glover's character from Friday the 13th Part 4. I thought was really memorable. Grady from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 2, I think is really memorable. And of course, the final girls. Girls like Laurie Strode and Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street. People like that, those are memorable. With these modern ones, you really don't care. But anyway, something to keep in mind, this film is rated PG-13, so we don't get a ton of gore in here. Which is a real shame, but we're not really missing that much. All the kills are really generic. And the killer in this one does actually do a good performance. He does the best with what he's given. Other than that, there's not a whole lot to say about this movie. It's very bland, forgettable. It's rated PG-13, so there's not going to be a lot of gore or violence in it. Other than that, there's really not too much to remember about this, and I just hated this movie. I just hated it. And so now we move on to A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010. And I really don't want to talk about this movie. I really don't. Because I hated this movie. So far, it's probably the worst remake I've ever seen. And A Nightmare on Elm Street 2010, it's a movie that really shouldn't have been made. The film was directed by Samuel Bayer, who has done a ton of music videos. He's directed a ton of music videos. He directed Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit, Ozzy Osbourne's Mama I'm Coming Home, Iron Maiden's Wasting Love. He also did Metallica's Until It Sleeps. A few Marilyn Manson videos, Coma White, Rock is Dead, Disposable Teens, Aerosmith's Sunshine. Pretty much every Green Day music video that came off of American Idiot he did. So he has quite a resume when it comes to music videos. As far as movie is concerned, I'll give the movie this. It's very visual. The cinematography is very good. The direction, I will say, it's decent. The idea of it is pretty cool, and the transitions from real world to nightmares are pretty cool as well. Specifically, the classroom scene and the drugstore scene; those are really well done as well. So the idea of this is that it's kind of the same thing as the original, but not really. And really, the main plot is basically that of the original. It doesn't borrow too much from it, but it borrows just enough. And a lot of the death scenes are exactly like those in the original. And I'm honestly not exaggerating when I say that, or at least the nightmare sequences. I really am not exaggerating when I say that they are exactly like. I think that there's a character named Chris, who a female character named Chris, who I don't know how to explain it. Like she's jerked around the room like in the original, and she gets killed. There's a scene. There's the body bag scene. They use so much imagery from the remake, and from the original, and there's a difference between paying homage and ripping it off shot by shot, and I feel that that's what this film does. It really just rips off some of the original scenes shot by shot, and you can tell it's obvious that it's not very original. The teenagers all suck. They do. They all suck. None of them have any personality at all. And you really don't care about them. Especially Nancy. Oh my god. This character has no personality. It is a sharp contrast from the original. In the original, Nancy, who was played by Heather Langenkamp, she had tons of charisma. She was a very strong character. In this one, no. No, she isn't. It doesn't help that the performance is not very good. Like, she's played by Rooney Mara, and I think this was like her first film, or something like. It was at least her first starring picture, and you can tell that she doesn't really care. She isn't really putting any effort into this, and I actually heard later on that she hated being in this movie, which honestly, that would not surprise me if that turned out to be the case. But yeah, a lot of the characters, especially Nancy, are not great. They're not memorable. They're just very bland, and you just don't care about them. Of course, the main deciding point is Freddy himself. And Freddy in this film is played by Jackie Earle Haley. And I really wanted to like Jackie Earle Haley as Freddy. I really did. But I could not get into Freddy Krueger in this one. I just didn't think that he was very good. Freddy's makeup was also really poor as well, in my opinion. And it really doesn't look very realistic. And you could tell that it was all done with CGI, or at least most of it was done with CGI. And that's the CGI I really hate, when CGI is really obvious. And not just obvious, but bad. When bad CGI is really obvious, that's when I hate it. And there are films that do really good CGI, like Terminator 2. That does good CGI. Spider-Man 3, when Sandman is first formed, that's great CGI. But when something like this, it's just not very good. And it really just looks like Freddy's face is just melted cottage cheese. That's how poor the makeup is. And they also flash back to Human Freddy. And Human Freddy in this one, he just comes off to me as just this kind of pathetic loser that works at the school. And that's not what I got in the original series when he was played by Robert Englund. I think and I'm not sure if it's the writing or if it's the performance, I don't know, but something about it, Freddy Krueger in this one, both human and and as Freddy Krueger, it just doesn't click. I mean, I definitely appreciate the effort. Jackie Earle Haley, I will give him credit. He does look like he's having fun in this role, and he's definitely trying his best to work with it. But I personally didn't like him as Freddy Krueger. But I will give him credit as that he was trying, and I will give him credit for that. But I think if Robert Englund was portraying Freddy in this one, specifically in the flashback scenes, if he was portraying Freddy in this, he would have done an effective job. Because Freddy in this one, Freddy in this one, in the flashbacks, he doesn't really look all that menacing, really. And if it was Robert Englund, he would be really creepy. And he's shown that in Freddy vs. Jason at the very beginning. And even in parts of Freddy's Dead, he showed that. In this one, he just comes across to me as a pathetic loser who works at the school, But there's not much more I need to say about this movie. Oh, and this one, the kills they can be pretty gory, but at the same time, they kind of it does seem like they tried to go for a PG-13 and ended up getting an R rating. And there are a few gory shots in this one, especially near the end, but it's really nothing more than you would see in a PG-13 movie. But other than that, I just hated this movie. I just could not stand it. This was only an hour and 30 minutes, but it really did feel like, it felt like 5 hours. So I just hated the movie. I mean, and if you like any of these movies, that's awesome. Personally, I'm just not a fan of the Nightmare on Elm Street film remake. And so now we move on to Fright Night 2011. And I think I watched this right after Elm Street 2010. So I was not in the best mood to watch it. So I didn't have any high hopes for it. But I ended up liking it far more better than Elm Street 2010. And I thought this was really good. This was a really good remake, which I was not expecting. And Fright Night, the original Fright Night, is one of my favorite horror movies from the 80s. I think it's a really good vampire movie. And this one, it's really not all that different, but at the same time, that's also a good thing as well. It takes place in modern times, which I think is better. It does center on Charlie Brewster, and he's at school and he's moving. I think he's like just moving in with his mom, and he has a girlfriend. And he lives next door to Jerry Dandridge, who in this film is played by Colin Farrell, and he does an amazing job in this one. Like, this role really does fit him to a T. You know, I totally bought him as a vampire. He was really good in this one. And Charlie also has a friend named Evil Ed, who's played by Christopher Mintz-Plasse, I think. I'm not sure of his name. He was McLovin in Superbad. Hold on. Yeah, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, I think that's how you say it. And he plays Evil Ed in this one, and he's pretty good. Though at the same time, you can kind of tell that he's just playing the Superbad role. You kind of tell that he's just playing his McLovin role, because he has a lot of comebacks for bullies, you know. And it really is just stuff that I don't think the original Evil Ed would ever say, and it's really more something like McLovin would say, like Superbad, you know. But that doesn't necessarily make it bad. And again, they're trying to make it modern, which I thought was cool. And they actually mentioned Twilight at one point in the movie. And Charlie and Ed are at one of their friends' house who was killed. And Charlie's like, "Okay, dude, you've been reading way too much Twilight." And he's like, "Twilight is fiction. This is reality." But, yeah. And there's also a character, and there's also the Peter Vincent character has been reinvented. He's played by David Tennant, who is best known for being, like, the 10th Doctor for Doctor Who, I think. I'm really not sure. I think he is the 10th Doctor. I'm not sure. I'm a newcomer to Doctor Who, so I really don't know everything about Doctor Who. I'm sure someone will correct me, though. But, they modernize him as this kind of Chris Angel-esque magician in Las Vegas, which I thought was really cool. And that was a great way to modernize the Peter Vincent character. And they just try and stop this. One of my favorite parts in this movie is when the Charlie Brewster gets hit by a car. Well, he and his mom are driving away from from Jerry, and they get hit by a car, and they collide with a car, and the person that hits them ends up being Chris Sarandon, and who played Jerry in the original, and he ends up being killed by the new Jerry in this one, and like that is what a cameo should be. You know, that's what a horror cameo should be. Like, the original killer coming face to face with the new killer. And I thought that was a really clever way to write him in. And it was just really cool to see Chris Sarandon again. So yeah, Friday Night 2011 is a really good remake. Oh, the makeup effects. I need to mention that very quick. Jerry's makeup effects near the end are really cool. And it is done with CGI, and you can kind of tell that it's done with CGI, but at the same time, it looks so cool that you really don't notice. And that's an example of good CGI. But, yeah, so Friday Night 2011 is a very good remake. Probably the best remake I've ever seen, actually. Which is a pretty rare occurrence, but yeah. So I definitely recommend Friday Night 2011. If you want a remake that's competent and a little bit different. Definitely check this one out. And so now we move on to Maniac 2012. And this is a bit of a different horror movie. And it revolves around a killer played by Elijah Wood, who scalps victims. And the interesting thing about this movie is that it's all done from his point of view. The entire movie is from his point of view. And I thought that was a really interesting experiment to try. Personally, I think it worked. I really liked this movie. And there's really not much to say about it, because it is kind of a generic plot, you know. But, and he, like, has obsessed with, like, mannequins and stuff like that. I really don't know. I don't really remember a lot from this movie. I just remember, like, the POV shots, the fact that the whole movie shot from his point of view. And I think it's a really interesting experiment. So I'd say check it out, because it is an interesting movie. And the last thing I'm going to talk about is the Evil Dead remake from last year. And I think at the end of last year, I put this film on my top 5 worst movies of 2013. And I just want to let you know that my stance has not changed on that. I really did not like the Evil Dead remake. I'll give it this. It was at least trying. And it was really gory. And I do appreciate good gore. And I do think that the gore was done rather well in this one. But again, the characters, you really don't care about them. And the story is just kind of generic. It's just used from the first film. So, and the main character really isn't that present for most of the film, which I didn't really like personally, but that's just me. Personally, I just did not like this movie, but that's just me. So that's it for Horror Remakes 2000, for part 1. I'll be checking out some other horror remakes, and I'll be doing those sometime. And the important thing I want to say about really any of these movies, if you like any of these movies, that's great, you know. Everyone has their own taste. I like to say that it's different strokes for different folks. I might hate the Nightmare on Elm Street remake personally, but I know that there are people who do like it, and that's cool. So I just wanted to make that clear. But anyway, on Friday I'll be coming back again on Friday, and when I come back on Friday, I'll be talking about a series that I really like, and I know that a certain listener of this podcast also likes. And I'm going to be talking about the Spider-Man series, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man series. So that's going to be tons of fun, and I'll see you then.